Welcome to this short demo on the asset groups. Let's first define what an asset group is and how it is useful for your organization. Asset groups help you organize the systems and devices in your environment. For example, it helps you organize your domain controllers, your servers, networking devices, workstations, etc. Following a vulnerability scan or host discovery of your environment, Fortra VM automatically recognizes what you have and groups your assets accordingly. Let's now show where you can create an asset group. You can either click on the new button on the top right side of the header, click on Asset Group. Or you can also click on System and then click on Asset Groups. And finally on this new Asset Group button on the upper right of the screen. An asset group is created by one of the following methods. Standard. A standard asset group is an asset group that you create by manually adding static IP addresses and host names, along with their associated ports. And a dynamic asset group is an asset group that the console creates automatically following a vulnerability scan or a host discovery. You can create it with many conditional filters. Let's now see how to create a standard asset group. Once on the Create New Asset Group page, we'll perform the following actions. We will add the asset group name. I will call it Critical Assets. Then we select Standard, which is already selected by default, and we'll add a description that can be, for example, this asset group gathers all the critical assets of my organization. We can then enable risk weight, which is an optional field. This will enable to reveal a weight sliding scale, which lets you weight the asset group's risk to your environment. The higher the weight, the more the assets affect your security GPA, which is one of the console security scoring system, and vice versa. We can also enable the Use as Label option, which is an optional field that will enable us to apply a smart label with the same name as the asset group to scan the assets that meet the group's criteria. The second section shows the business group ACLS. If we want to associate the asset group to a business group, for example, let's take demo in this case, we then click on Save and our asset group is created. Once the asset group created, we will land on a screen in which we can see three tabs: General Info, IPs and ports, and host names and ports. General Info are the information we type to create the asset groups. IP and ports is where we are going to manually add the IPs for these asset groups, and the ports field is where we are going to add the ports we want to be scanned. With this asset group, we can choose whether to include or exclude a range of IP addresses and or ports. Include is the default option. For example, we can add a range of IPs. The Auto Add IPs option allows us to automatically add these IPs to the appropriate scanner profile. Let's now go to the third tab, Host Names and Ports. And here we won't add IPs, we want to include or exclude, but we will add host names or FQDNs. The principle is the same. We're going to add, for example, an FQDN, add ports if it's relevant, and then select a scanner profile and click on Save to create the asset group. Our asset group is created as we can see here, and we can easily delete it if we want by clicking on the asset group in question and then click on the delete button that's on the top right of the screen. Let's now create a dynamic asset group. But first, let's define what a dynamic asset group is. A dynamic asset group is a way for the user to create an asset group and specify criteria that will allow the console, following a vulnerability scan or a host discovery, to identify the assets that meet the criteria that were created. Please note that dynamic asset groups will only contain or filter previously scanned hosts that are contained in the active view section of the console. I will create a name for the dynamic asset group. I will click on dynamic. I will give a description, all the server's asset group. Again, click on save. I will see two tabs, general info, and then the second tab is dynamic assets. This is where I'm going to create my conditions or criteria. Here, I decided to create a simple condition to automatically have the console identifying the machines I scanned that are servers. I will then select the type here, select is, but I have other options as well, and then select server. Of course, I can add a lot more conditions, as you can see here, but I will stop at my first condition. I then click on save. Now my dynamic asset group is created. I called it my dynamic asset group. And from now, all the servers that were identified and that will be identified in the future scans or host discovery will enter this dynamic asset group. I hope you enjoyed the demo and thank you for watching.